Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf podcast that interviews the best and brightest minds in the golf industry. Now, here's your host, Bernard Sheridan.
So, Mark, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks for being with us today.
Bernard, thanks for having me. It's nice to talk a little golf here and not be so cold. But it's warming up here slowly but surely. But it's great to be here.
So how warm is it right now as opposed to what it has been for the past few days?
Well, it's a balmy 35 here in Maryland. We're just outside of Annapolis in Baltimore. So it's been a high of 19 the last few days with lows in the 2, 3, 4 area at night. So it's slowly getting there. We're going to get up to 50 and almost 60 by the end of the week. So warmer times ahead, hopefully. So we're hanging in there. Luckily, I have an indoor room that I teach in and I use in the wintertime. So I'm very lucky.
Have you always resided in Baltimore area?
I'm a Maryland guy my whole life. I went to college at Towson University just north of Baltimore, but I've been in Maryland my whole life. So this roughly this area my whole life. That's correct.
Yeah, I'm originally from Philadelphia, and we used to make a trip down there. I would say once every at least 2 years to the Inner Harbor and
Yep.
and then just go into town and do a few things. And I've always enjoyed the city of Baltimore. It's a real nice city, and that Inner Harbor area is beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. We're big Baltimore fans. Both my wife there, so we love it. My wife works part-time there as well, and we love the city. It's had a rough go here the last couple.
Yeah, it has, but it's hopefully those things. I think that's pretty much everywhere. Even though Baltimore's taken quite a beating a few years ago, but it's just definitely a great town and a lot of fun to go to, especially to go to see ball games there. Like Camden Yards is just a great stadium, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great park for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So when is the first time that you picked up a golf club? How old were you?
Well, I was a little bit late into the game. I mean, I didn't start playing and pick up a club for the first time until I was 17. I was working at a driving range here, which is actually where I'm teaching now, so I've kind of come full circle. Grew up playing baseball a little bit and then started playing ice hockey when I was 10. And that was really my life. Played high school varsity and college hockey as well, still play. And I just did it sort of for a summer job, because I got free range balls and I was hooked. It really became something that I really fell in love with and started doing it. Never imagined that I would be doing golf for a living. That never occurred to me. My family didn't play growing up either. I was not in a golf family. So it was kind of just out of left field, so to speak. And it's been great. But yeah, didn't do it till I was 17.
When did you make that decision to say, hey, maybe I want to do this as a career? And when you did, what did you decide that you wanted to do in golf? I mean, did you really say, hey, I really want to teach this?
Well, I think when I started, I was just anybody reading books constantly, and I wanted to teach. But for me, I kind of fell backwards into it. I had a friend hire me in the golf shop when I was graduating college. I needed a job. I had worked in bag rooms and things like that, and that was my first golf job inside the golf shop at a club. And I did that for 15 years, teaching as a part of it, and then sort of got away from teaching. As a lot of pros watching probably know, there's a lot more to do when you're an assistant pro and a head pro. So that was what I wanted to do ideally, but it took a while for me to come around to that. And then I started my own 6 years ago now, teaching full time.
Okay, so you've been teaching full time with your own academy for the past 6 years then?
Correct. I was a head pro at a nice club for 10 years. I was there for 10 years, last six as a head pro. My first son was born, and I just knew I wanted to be there more, honestly, Bernard. And I also knew that I really loved to teach. I love being one-on-one with people. helping people. That's something that I like doing. And so I just decided, came home, I want to quit basically and start my own business. I've got maybe an opportunity to do something here right up the road from where we live. And to my wife's credit, she said, "Hey, this is what you want to do. Let's do it." And it's been an interesting ride, growing your own business. The other thing too is I have a second son now too, and I haven't missed one thing in their lives. So it's been an awesome balance between teaching and helping people and being there for my wife and kids.
Yeah, which is very important. I mean, it's tough in this business to have that time. I know that, especially if you're at a club, they're very demanding of your time. Sometimes 60, 70 hours a week. So it's difficult to, you might get one day off a week, Monday. Big reason why we tape Mondays, because most of the people that we are dealing with are club pros and that we have as guests, and Monday is the day they're more free and
Right.
available to do things. So I know it's difficult. I actually always had my own academy, and only until recently did I decide I wasn't going to stay with my academy anymore, and went with Bobby Clampett because he offered me to come down here to Naples. But the whole time I would actually do that, and I was an audio engineer too in the evenings. So I was usually working like 80 hours a week, even though I had both my own businesses. But that's what I had to do to keep my head above water. So it was just kind of the way it was. And it seemed through most of my marriage, my wife was okay with that. So, but
Yeah. And for me too, I've got my business to the point where when I started it, I was teaching as much as I could to be as available to build a client business. And now I've gotten to the point where I'm scaling my days back and having more regular students. And this year, through the middle of the year to now, I taught 4.5 days a week and had a fantastic year. So that's the goal: is be home more, teach in big bursts. Through my schedule, fill my schedule with people who want to come regularly, and get that balance, like you said.
So for you, what is the format that you're usually using to work with your students? Is most of your format one-on-one? Do you do group coaching? Do you do? I mean, what are you using right now? Because I see that a lot of professionals that teach are moving more into coaching models than they are one-on-one.
And I would say that's fair. I mean, I think I don't do much group coaching, partly because at our facility, while we have a private teaching area and we have grass and we have some space, there's 2 other teachers who run their own businesses there as well. And I'm lucky that I'm the only one with TrackMan and some other technology, so I'm able to use that indoors. So my space is limited, so group stuff is a little bit more difficult for me. So I switched this year, though, to a monthly coaching model. So basically my programs are 3 months or 12 months. I do individual lessons as well, but 3 months or 12 months, and you can either do 2 or 4 a month, and you're paying me monthly. And what I found with that, honestly, is not only from a business perspective has it been great for cash flow and understanding where you're going to be down the line, but it's great for the commitment. I get in there and I say, hey, look, if we're going to do 2 times a month, I'm going to go out and I'm going to schedule all our sessions for you. And so we're on the books and we've committed to each other. And it's been, I think, phenomenal. For them, we see improvement. They understand what it means to commit long-term and see incremental improvement. And for me, I get to be more one-on-one with them and sort of caring and helping with them. And we communicate via email and we're in touch a lot. The one-off lessons, and again, some people need those, and sometimes you're just going to have to give those, and that's cool. But certainly don't want to build or try and make that the foundation of my business, because that's not a particularly stable foundation to build a business on. And the change this year to this kind of coaching model, a monthly thing, has been just phenomenal for me, honestly.
Well, I think also, too, that for students, the one-off is not really very beneficial. I mean, it's
No.
I always look at it, I guess, because I was in the entertainment field for so many years. I look at golf lessons as like music lessons. Now, when someone takes music lessons, they go every single week for a half-hour lesson. Okay, it's usually a half hour. It's rare that it's an hour. With golf, it's better to do an hour because you can't get much accomplished in a half hour. But they'll go for a half-hour lesson every week. They'll be given an assignment every week to practice certain things. And then they're told they're supposed to practice this for a half hour a day, every day, or at least 5 days a week.
Right.
And this is an ongoing thing. It never changes. I've found that in golf, a lot of people want to do a one-off or like maybe a package of 5 lessons or something like that. And then they leave. So basically what happens then is their game begins to revert back to where it was, or their game might improve. They'll see some improvement exponentially, and then it'll start to fade away, and then they'll want to come back and do a one-off again, or they're having trouble with one certain part. If we look at PGA Tour professionals and LPGA Tour professionals, they work with their coaches on a regular basis. Now, these are the greatest players in the world.
Right.
So if anybody needs a one-off, it's them.
Yeah,
Because
right.
they can pretty much handle everything. But it's kind of, they think of it totally different. And it may be because they're not doing it recreationally. They're doing it to put food on the table. But still, players are, I think, frustrated when they don't see those results that they want. Like they'll see immediate results and then they'll leave and they're all happy. And then all of a sudden, they're back to where they were and they don't see the results stick and things like that. So I think that for all our listeners out there who are students, the program that Mark has is a great idea for you to get involved in that type of a program, no matter who you're working with, whether you're working with Mark or myself or any other coach. See him at least twice a month. Work out a program so that you're committed, like a gym membership. That way you can't put it off. You're always going to get better, and you're going to maintain what you have. You can't maintain what you have if you don't stick to it.
Well, and that's the thing too, Ron, is I used to do the packages too, but there was no time frame set on them. So you do a package 5 or 6 or whatever it may be. Well, you do the first one and then you do the second one 3 months later. As you said, there's no question that the student's going to revert back.
Yeah, you're doing the first one all over again, is what you're doing.
Basically, you're doing the same lesson. And then what happens is they may get frustrated and say, well, this isn't helping me. But in reality, we're not doing it in the right order or amount of frequency. And again, and the other thing I tell a lot of my students too, just to kind of get this, look, think of anything you do in your life that you're good at. There's no way you just went in there and did it right away. You did it, you built your way up, you paid your dues, and golf is no different. And the same thing about going to the gym, like you said too. I mean, nobody goes to the gym and you try and pick up the heaviest weight right away. You build up to that. And a lot of people are more accepting of that. But when you put golf in that perspective, they don't seem to be as accepting sometimes. And I think they have to look at an incremental, small steps, set small goals, hit one, then move on and move up and keep going. It's not the end result right away. It's enjoy the journey, work your way up to it.
Well, I think that everything that's worthwhile is like that. And yes. I think that for some reason, I guess the only reason why people feel that way about golf is because the pros make it look so easy. And the ball is not moving. So everybody thinks that because the ball's not moving, how hard can this game be? You just hit a ball, you go chase it and hit it again. Right. But they don't take into consideration all the variables that are involved. Not only variables of personal variables of how things change from day to day, if the way our body works or the way that we feel, but that you're on a different lie every time you hit a golf ball, and you never hit the exact same shot twice. So that's not that easy to do. So you definitely have to put some time in.
Yeah, I mean it is a hard game, and I mean you can imagine how many people are watching the golf highlights. As we do this now, Dustin Johnson won yesterday, and he almost holes out on a 430-yard hole with his driver, knocks it 3 inches. Oh, easy game, but that's obviously just another universe. So that's what I mean. The coaching thing has been so beneficial for me too, so that I can make sure I'm taking the right steps with somebody and we're not missing anything. And then from their perspective, we're always staying on top of it. Even in the wintertime, like now, I tell my students, look, even if you can't pick a club up, at least we know twice a month you're going to come in for an hour and we're going to do some practice. And I've got a golf simulator too through TrackMan that I just got too. So we'll hit some balls, we'll do some work, and when things look pretty good and we're hitting it well, we'll go play a couple holes on the simulator and do some course management. So we can keep in touch with it and stay progressing at all points.
Yeah, it's like a muscle. I mean, you have to exercise it, and if you don't exercise it, it's going to get weak and flaccid, and it's not going to perform at the level that you want it to. So when a student comes to you, what are some of the typical things that you go through? Let's say I'm a student and I'm coming to you for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So give our listeners out there kind of a rundown as to what you do when you first see players, and then what is a program that you kind of try to get them started in, and is it tailored to them individually, or is it some of them kind of cross the barriers as to being similar? What's your mode of operation there?
Well, I think when I get a new student in, I mean the initial session is, golf aside, it's really about getting to understand each other's personalities and getting comfortable with each other. I think a lot of people, when you talk about long-term programs, they get a little skittish because there's a commitment there financially, and they don't know in the initial stage, they don't know you. So for me, it's really important to have somebody come in and make them feel like they're welcome. And I'm somebody they want to spend an hour with twice a month, because the bottom line is, forget all the golf instruction part first. If they don't want to be around you, or you don't have a personality that is, or has a good bedside manner, they're not going to want to come to you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's funny. I had a student who came in the other day who I haven't seen in quite a while, due to I had health issues and things like that. But when he came in, he said that he did a school and he worked with one of the other instructors. And then he spoke with me, and he said, for some reason, he said, he's good at what he does. He said, but we just didn't click. It just wasn't. I just didn't feel comfortable with him. He said, but for some reason, I totally feel really comfortable with you. So that just makes it easier for me, which is true.
And that's so important. So we get past, as we do that point, and that's happening during the first lesson, especially. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I'm very upfront with the person that I'm going to probably ask a lot of questions in the first lesson, especially. I'm going to ask them what they do for a living, health issues, surgery history. What am I dealing with on a health basis? I think that's really important. And I also think an important one that I always make sure I ask is, what sports have you played in the past? How can I relate golf to your sports? I think that's really, really important. And I get a lot of students who have played baseball, and they've had their friends tell them, oh, you swing too much like baseball. And I can't tell you how much I love having somebody who has baseball background. Some of my longest, couple guys played college baseball this year, and they just get it. It's such a great sport for golf.
I totally agree. And it's funny. I always thought that it was very strange that people would say, if you're playing golf, don't play baseball. Don't play baseball at all. Or if you're playing baseball, don't play golf. It'll mess your baseball swing up. And it's really the exact same swing. The only difference is you don't step. And instead of it being, eye level, it's on the ground. So it's amazing to me that I want to say falsehood or stigma has stopped so many baseball players from enjoying the game of golf, and so many golfers from enjoying recreational baseball. I mean, I know a lot of golfers who will go play in softball leagues and and things like that. And I think that it translates. I think hockey too, same thing.
It does.
Translates excellently. All I did was play baseball and hockey as a kid. I didn't play golf at all. I really didn't even pick up golf seriously until I was 33 years old. So talk about late bloomers. I was extremely late bloomer. And it's just because I felt like as a kid that golf was more of an old man sport, and it wasn't cool to be a golfer. But when I got older, I didn't care what anybody thought, whether I was cool or not. And then I started to play, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And I also, by that time, really couldn't play baseball or hockey anymore without taking a beating, without my body being beat up,
Yeah, so I think that, I get into their injury history and their backgrounds a bit and ask them some questions about, what their biggest misses are. If we could clean one thing up and make golf more fun for you, what would it be? And just a lot of leading questions to get them to start to think openly about where they want to go with this. I think some people will come in and they know they want to get better, but they haven't thought about the line they need to take.
Right.
And obviously that's for me to help them with, but I think you got to start getting them to get their mind thinking in that direction. And then we'll start to hit some shots. I'll go through a few different clubs, do it on TrackMan just to get some basic information and take some video, and we'll start there. And I'll also ask them a lot, and this is something that I've learned over the last couple of years, is when they're hitting a golf ball, what's their intention? Do you understand what really happens at impact? And what I've found is I made the mistake early on teaching, not finding out what their concept in a general way of impact was. And I could have made a lot of lessons quicker and better simply by asking that question, because their concept is incorrect.
Right.
So we can make some massive changes just for them understanding how the club interacts with the ball on the ground. And they don't get that. So I think when you start to clean that up, you can make some pretty big changes. And then from there, we start to peck away at different parts of their game. But that's sort of the initial process. Get to know each other, find out what you do for a living, injury history, get a lot of information, and where you want to go with this thing. And I always try and call it a team and a partnership as much as I can, because it is. I want their feedback just as much as I'm going to give them mine.
Oh, no, I totally agree, and I believe that the lines of communication between student and instructor is really, really important when they're not together, because that way when things aren't, if they're seeing you every other week, some things can maybe go a little haywire in between. And
Sure.
So if they can relay that to you as a coach, and then you can say to them, okay, go back and do this drill right now, and work on this drill until I see you next. So at least you can kind of nip it in the bud before it gets out of hand, because it can get out of hand very quickly in golf. It really can, because if they start to shank it or something like that, all of a sudden they get in their own head, and it really just kind of makes it even worse.
Well, and that's one of my big foundations, I would say, too, out of the coaching programs, Bernard, is that I'm very clear with my students that I want them at the end of the day to be, and that's why I ask a lot of questions, like in lessons when they hit a bad shot. I'm not really worried about one bad shot. I also want them to understand that they need to fix things on patterns, not on one bad swing, because we all do that. And some people wrongly think the pros don't do that because you don't see them that often because they don't show it. But if you were seeing the whole field hit shots, you'd see a lot of bad ones too.
Yeah.
But I tell them, I want you to be able to see a shot on the range or a pattern start to emerge and understand your game and exactly what you need to bring back here to you to fix it, so you don't get in a rut where you start searching for things. Okay, I know Mark told me 2 things when I got to check, and you can go back and check those, and boom, you can fix it. That's the self-awareness and self I want my students to have.
Now, do you start right in with full swing when they first come with you, or do you start with short game? I mean, what do you do in that realm?
I think it depends on what the feedback they give me, but in general, I would say full swing is the majority of the time. I think there's a lot of things you can do better in the full swing with a better short game motion, but let's be honest too that people are paying you money, and full swing is
Why they're there.
and they enjoy that, and I can eventually get to the point where I can say, hey, look, we need to stop working on full swing and really work on your short game. And once they get comfortable with me and I feel comfortable enough with them and I've been with them enough, I can do that. But in the first lesson, I might not do that because I want to show them that I can at least help them in an area and make them hit it better, even just a little bit in that first lesson, and give them a little bit of hope.
Sure.
And then we can go into that other stuff. I mean, you and I both know, how important short game is.
Extremely important.
But at the same time, if I get somebody in there who can't hit a driver and play ever, we need to fix that. So I would say,
yeah, I mean, if you can't get off the tee, there is no short game.
No, you're chipping for 8 make much sense anyway. So I think to answer your question, yeah, we're going full swing most times to start, and then we'll get into the other parts.
Right. Now you're working with a lot of junior players too?
No, I don't do a lot of juniors. My business, it's really been interesting, Bernard. When I started, I was trying to sort of teach all ranges and everything I could. And then what's happened is I've progressed as an instructor, and my clientele has sort of come into this zone where I know exactly what my clientele is. And my clientele now is mostly adults. I do teach some kids, a couple of kids who play college golf, and some juniors one-on-one, but very few of those. My typical clientele is the sort of low single digit to 25 handicap player, the avid golfer who's the ones who are supporting our business and who spend money on clubs. They play a lot of golf. Some are members at clubs, or they just play public golf all over the place. That's really what my clientele has sort of come into. So that's the vast majority of who I teach.
Yeah, I think that for me too it's very similar to that. It's like that single digit to like a 20, and a lot of them have memberships at clubs. A lot of them, if they don't, they're playing regularly, once, twice, 2-3 times a week, at public courses, and they just want to lower their score. I mean, that's really all they're interested in doing. And then they also, of course, just want to be able to do what they do more consistently. As opposed to, they're like, I'm okay hitting a cut shot as long as I can hit a cut shot every time, and I don't have those errant shots that I just hit it out of bounds left because I pull it. And,
right.
So things like that. And then there's some, like you mentioned before, who have absolutely no idea, really, why they're there, other than they just want to build consistency, but they really don't know where they want their game to go, or don't have any ambition to, they just want to play a little bit better and just hit the ball more consistent, maybe not embarrass themselves.
Right, and I think there's those students too. I mean, I think as we've gotten into the coaching model in golf, I think my only sort of beef with the coaching model is a lot of it is it's all about score. It's all about score. We got to help people score better. And I've made the point a few times on social media and everything. Like, look, I get that, especially depending on your level and what you're trying to do. But there is a part of the population that doesn't care about that. They come to me and they want to hit the ball better because that gives them joy.
Right.
And you've got to make sure that you're tailoring what you're doing to the student and not forcing score down their throat when they need to be able to hit the ball better, and that's what they want to do. And so to me, that's really, really, really important. No question.
Yeah, what I love about golf more than other sports, even though I was a huge baseball and hockey guy, is the social aspect of golf. And that score is great, but you can be social on the golf course. It's kind of hard to be social when you're in the middle of a hockey game. I mean, the most social you're going to be is when you get in the corner, say to the guy, I'm going to kick your butt. And even then, you don't even have time to say that. You just usually do it. As opposed to in golf, there's a lot of downtime there. So in between shots. So that gives you time to be social and also to take in the beautiful surroundings. So there's so much more to the game than just getting the ball in the hole. I mean, there's a lot to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want people to have more fun, and then whatever that means for them, we'll figure it out, and we'll tailor it to them. We gotta ask enough questions to find out, and really help them sort of pull it out of them, and say, hey, what are you here for? What gives you joy about it? So.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think that for those of our listeners who are not professional, or for both of our listeners, for our professional listeners, and for our student listeners, take a word of advice here from Mark, and make sure that if it's your students, that you're getting to know them and getting to understand all that information. You're going to be able to serve them better. And if you're a student, make sure whoever you are working with is doing this. If they're not, you're not getting the major benefit that you deserve from the association with that coach. You want to find a coach who is like that, who wants to get to know you as a person, so they can better understand the inner workings of what your game will be and what your game will need truly, as opposed to just looking at numbers.
Right.
So you mentioned you use TrackMan. I'm sure that you use numbers there.
Sure.
But you're using those numbers, I'm sure, to try to achieve a certain goal, and not really just saying to people, "Hey, here's the number. You need to get to this number. You need to do that. You need to do that."
Yeah, I mean, we've heard those arguments time and again, right? I mean,
sure.
the technology doesn't give the lesson. I do, and I tell my students when I show them something in particular on that screen, I say, "Look, this is all I'm going to give you. The rest of this is for me. It's not for you. I just want you to have an understanding in a general way of something here, and I'm using it for verification or for testing, especially in the indoor room when it's cold like it is now.
Yeah,
we'll do testing and things like that just to keep them on their toes." So yeah, I use TrackMan. I use BodyTrack as well. That's been a really nice tool. They upgraded that this year, and it's been a nice tool for me. I've used it a bunch this year with some really good results. And then video, and as I head to the PGA show here in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be looking into K-Vest as well. So always trying to add some new things and plug some holes where I feel like maybe I can get some better results if I had another way to do it. It's always trying to keep up and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I always feel that the more technology you have, as long as you don't overbog the student with it,
sure,
it's a faster way for you to trim the fat off the meat and get to the meat of the problem quicker.
Yes.
And then be able to measure that and to show progress, so that students will see that they are progressing. Because as we talked about earlier, some students believe the only way they're progressing is their scores drop. And that's not always true. I mean, you can become a much better ball striker and still shoot the same score. And your scores won't reflect that all the time. I attest to that myself. There's many times that I've played a round of golf and my score wasn't what I thought it was, but my ball striking, I had a good day, and people would say, geez, the way I watched you play, I would never have thought that you would have shot that score.
Yeah.
And it's just miss a few putts here, things of that nature, maybe not get up and down. Next thing you know, it adds up, and you start to get some bogeys on the card. So it's...
Yeah. Well, golf's funny like that, and I think the technology can be very valuable in those ways. I mean, it was breaking with me working in the indoor room on his wedge game, and when he started with his wedge game, he was doing a 15-shot test that I would do for wedges on TrackMan, and his scores were really low, and then we would come in and we would do some work on it, and I think the first time he did it on a test center on TrackMan, his score was maybe around 30 for 15 shots. Not very good for a college level player at all. and he just left to go back to school, and he had a 78 on the wedge test. So he put the work in. He was coming to me regularly, but that's where the technology really helped us, because we could test, work, go back and test again, verify, and you've got some manner of which is super important.
Yeah,
That's why I love it.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that whoever is out there, student-wise, who's going to a coach's, it's a good idea that whoever you're seeing has some type of technology that they can measure some information there. You may be able to go and get lessons from someone who doesn't at a lower cost, but it's going to take a lot longer for them to get you to where you need to be. So in the long run, it's going to end up costing you the same anyway.
Right.
And I always say that and usually, and of course there's some that are very high in price point, but then that's because they're getting results much quicker, and they can afford that, or they just don't want to work as much.
Yeah, well, that too.
And they're okay with that too. I mean, it's like, I'd rather do 10 students a week than 20 and make the same amount of money, so I'll just charge more.
Sure.
And that happens too. So for those students who and people who are in the Maryland area and visiting, or reside there, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you and to maybe come and work with you?
Well, I'm all over the place. I've got my website's a good place to start. Mark Russo PGA. I'm all over social media. I'm on Instagram at Mark, as well as on Twitter. I'm with the same. I have a Facebook page as well for my business, Mark Russo PGA, and then my YouTube channel is Mark Russo Golf. So I've put a few videos on there and post a few thoughts on there as well.
Okay.
Start and get a hold of me there, and it's a lot of information out there, and I enjoy it. And that's the thing. I'm looking for those folks who want to get better, who want to have somebody who cares about them, because that to me is what I love doing about this, is being able to help people and really get in there and do it together. And so that's who I'm looking for, and I think there's people out there who are looking for that too.
I think that anybody who's taken lessons is looking for that. Who's looking for somebody to work with their coach as a team and to do their best together to have the best interest at heart to improve. And that's really what I think everybody wants, which is good. You're doing a great service. So thanks so much for being with us, Mark. We appreciate you taking the time out today on a cold winter afternoon here. And probably when the show will air, probably will not be as cold because, of course, we taped the show. But once again, thanks again for being with us. And until we meet again, do your best to keep it in the short grass.
Thanks, Bernard. I really appreciate it. You take care.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.